us. You're working in us. You're doing great works, and sometimes we fail to acknowledge that. Forgive us. Help us to exalt your name for your glory and for your majesty. Lord, I pray that this morning you would be exalted, you would be lifted up, and that we would have a greater vision and a greater desire and a greater enjoyment of you. God, as we open your word, as we continue our time in Romans, I pray that, God, you would open our eyes and open our hearts to see more of you, that we can just relish in this wonderful truth that you have revealed yourself through your word, and that you would speak to our hearts. You know what everybody needs this morning. You know their hurts, their aches, their pains, their struggles, their fears, their joys. And I pray that, God, you would speak to their hearts. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, my sermon is entitled, Why We Groan. Why we groan. Now, I'm not talking about the groaning that we feel sometimes when we get up in the morning. Especially as we get older, we feel that groan. It's a little harder to get out of bed. I'm talking about an inward groan. That ache that we all feel in various points of life, that things aren't okay. Things aren't okay in the world around us, and they're not okay in the world in us. And so we feel this ache, this groan. And we do so because God is wanting to push us beyond the present scene realities of this world. That we can look up and we can have a greater taste, if you will, of what is to come. That we groan for a home that we've never seen. We ache for a place we've never been, that we can scarcely imagine. And yet we feel it because God has placed eternity in our hearts. And so I thought about this as I was working on this sermon this week, and I thought about my work with refugees, which was in Chicago and then a little bit in Detroit. Now, a refugee is defined as someone who has been displaced, that is, without a place. And there are millions of refugees in the world today. Because of war and persecution, they have been displaced from their country of origin. They are forced to leave their country of origin. So in Chicago, where I was a pastor for a while, we worked with an organization that helped refugees adjust to America, to assimilate. And so we offered them English as a second language, ESL. We offered them educational classes, job classes to help them prepare for a job, basic adjustment issues, if you will. But one of the things I noticed, as they learned to assimilate and learn English and learn to work a job in America, they never forgot their home. They never lost that longing and that ache for their place of origin, where they were reared and grew up. And they always would tell me and others, I hope one day we can go back. I hope the war ends. I hope it gets better over in my country, because that's my country. Now, I thought about that as a Christian. We are like refugees. We are displaced. This world is not our home. Now, we're here. We are sojourners, if you will. We're passing through, but it's not our home. So what does God do? God reminds us of that. He allows suffering. He allows disappointment. He allows difficult things in life to take our hands, if you will, off of this place, of this world, and get us to focus on what is to come. And so he allows those things to happen to remind us, oh yeah, I don't belong here. I don't fit in. I don't fit the mold of this world. Jesus says that we're in the world, but not of the world. And that's a very important distinction. We are like the children of Israel in the desert, wandering in the wilderness, but we're not at the promised land yet, but we're heading there. And Jesus can come back and will come back at any moment. We don't know, but we're to wait, we're to expect and to hope, and that's what I'll be sharing about this morning. So we are displaced people. We have a place, but we're not there yet. Amen. We're on our way. And that is a wonderful reality and truth that we can hold on to. So turn with me to Romans chapter 8. My theme this morning is that we ache for a place we've never been. We ache for and groan for a place place that we know we're headed to that we can't even possibly imagine. And yet we have to keep that flame alive and that hope within. So here's my 2 points this morning. Number one is the reason we suffer. The reason we suffer, number one. And number two, the reality of hope. So number one, the reason that we do groan and ache, the reason that we do suffer. And number two is the reality of hope, the hope which is to come. So Romans chapter 8, starting with verse 18. We're picking up from where we left off last week. Starting with verse 18. This is my first point, the reason we suffer. Paul says, "For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us." I reckon, that is, I count in myself, that is, I reason. The picture is like of a merchant counting coins after a day's work to count and see how much he made. The idea is Paul is considering, he's counting this in his mind. What is he counting in his mind? That the sufferings of this present time, that is right now, what we're experiencing right now, cannot compare to what we shall receive in glory. Now this is a wonderful truth, because just before, like we talked about last week, Paul talks about this idea of adoption. He says in verse 15, "For you have not received the spirit of bondage again to fear." You don't have to be afraid of death, in other words. You don't have to fear it like unbelievers do, because unbelievers don't have a hope of what is next. All they know is this present age. And that's a scary thought. It's a daunting thought. That's all they know. And if all that we knew was this, we would be despaired, folks. No, Paul says we have not the spirit of bondage, but we have received the spirit of adoption, whereby we cry, Abba. The word is daddy. Father. We are sons and daughters of God. We do have that belonging, that sense of adoption. Verse 16, "And the Spirit himself beareth witness with our spirit that we are children of God." The Spirit of God reminds us, because sometimes we forget, don't you? Yeah. Because life is hard, and we struggle, and so we forget. And here, Paul is saying the Spirit of God reminds us that we are, in fact, children of God, that we do have a destiny, a place that we're headed toward, and God is going to see to it that we will be there, and we will get there. Jesus says, or Paul says about Jesus, that he who began a good work in you will complete it. He will complete it. So we are incomplete. We are half completed, if you will. And so Paul's making that clear. And now in verse 18, he mentions sufferings. So here's the idea. As a parent, if you're a parent out there, you want to take care of your kids. You want to protect them from suffering. But ultimately, you can't. Not everything. They're going to get their heart broken. They're going to fall and get bruises. My daughter was on the swing set a couple days ago, and she was on her stomach, and she was swinging, and she flopped over right on her face. She had a bruise. I was close by, but I couldn't stop it. And she ran, "Mommy, Daddy," and we just could hold her and wipe her tears away. But you can't protect your children from everything. And so we are living as children of God in a world that we get lots of bumps and bruises in. We fall off the swings too. We get our heart broken. We get disappointed. We feel rejected. We feel alone. We feel isolated. It's all a part of living in a fallen world. It does not mean that we're not children of God. God is our Father. And one day, the Bible says he will wipe away every tear from your eye. Behold, Jesus says, "I am making all things new," including you and I. We are in that process, but right now, we have to deal with sufferings of this present age. But note, it will not be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. Meaning, when we're there, we're going to look back on earth, however that's going to be, I'm not sure, and we're going to say it was worth it. Every bump and bruise, every heartache, every rejection, all the pain and suffering, disappointment, loss, it was worth it when we taste glory, when we are there. And so Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 17 to 18, something similar. "For our light affliction, which is but for a moment," that's a very important phrase, meaning in comparison comparison to eternity, it's only for a moment, our light affliction is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. While we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. And so we as Christians need to learn to readjust our perspective, if you will, to refocus and look not at only what's here, but look to what is unseen. Now here's a lesson. There are many people who are angry at God because of suffering. And they say things like this: it's not fair. I didn't sign up for this, God. This was not part of the deal. You shouldn't have allowed this to happen. And they blame God. Now I understand, because it's a very painful thing, and you feel that unfairness of life. But we live in a sinful world that's hostile to God. Jesus said, in this life, you will face difficulties. You will face affliction. Not you might, you will. And so people have shipwrecked their faith because they blame God for suffering. God's not the author of suffering, folks. The reality is we live in a world that's sinful and corrupted, and we have to deal with it, just like a child falls down and gets bumps and bruises. But we have one who can pick us up. One who can wrap us in his arms of grace and love on us and say it's going to be okay. Because you know why? One day it will end. One day the bumps and bruises will be healed. The tears will be wiped away. One day. But not yet. And that's faith. And so think about it. If we had everything we wanted in this life, if life always worked out the way we expected, hoped, planned, would we need God? Because we are naturally bent towards self. So God allows suffering. He allows that ache and that groan to remind us that he is the Lord and he's in control, and this is not our home. Amen. Because if we got overly snug down here, we would basically say, thanks God, but I'm good. I got this. And so he allows difficult things in our lives. He allows disappointment. He allows hurt. He allows pain. Not because he's trying to get us, but because he's trying to remind us and train us and teach us that he is all sufficient for our needs, and that heaven is that ultimate remedy for all the suffering in the world. That is our hope. We have a hope to look forward to, and so Paul makes that clear, that we need to trust in him, because what is compared to now, that is the suffering in this world, is going to be far better than anything we could possibly imagine. Verse 20, for the creature, in other words, creation, that's the actual Greek word, for the creation was made subject to vanity or emptiness, not willingly, I skipped that, verse 19, for the earnest expectation of the creature, that our creation, waiteth for the manifestation of the sons of God. So now Paul's making a parallel of creation. He's saying, you are suffering now as children of God because of the world we live in. And so is creation. Creation itself, it says, is an eager expectation, waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. What does that mean? Well, this word eager expectation means literally to extend your neck as to look out. Say, this is the picture. Say you're in a crowd and you're trying to look and see what everybody's looking at, or you're at a show and you can't see because the people are standing up in front of you. And so you're extending your neck, lifting your neck to see beyond the crowd. You have eager anticipation, expectation. You want to know, what is it? And that's the picture. Creation is eagerly waiting, looking. When is it going to happen? Meaning, when is Jesus going to come back? When is he going to come back? Creation is groaning within itself. It's waiting with anticipation for Christ to come back and for us to be glorified. That's the picture. So sometimes, if you're quiet, when you walk in nature, you can hear it. You can hear it in the creaking of the trees, and in the wind, and the rustling of the leaves. You know that creation is waiting. You can sometimes see it in the eyes of an animal. you can see this anticipation that this is not the way it was supposed to be. When Adam fell, everything fell. The world became corrupted. Fear came in and shame came in. Violence and greed. And so creation is waiting for Jesus to come back. Waiting for that moment. And so must we. Verse 20. For the creation was made subject to vanity, that is emptiness, not willingly, but by reason of him who hath subjected it to the same in hope. Because the creation itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. Here's the picture. When Adam fell, when Adam sinned in the garden, everything began to unravel. See, God made the world and everything beautiful and orderly. He spoke 9 times, Genesis chapter 1. God said, and he spoke and he created everything. The trees and the grass and the mountains and the oceans and the planets and the stars and the universe. Everything he created by his word, and it was beautiful. And he said, what did he say afterward? He said, it is good. It is good. And then he created man, the ultimate, the crown of creation. He created man in his own image. And he said, it is very good. But that man had a will. That man could choose. And God said, do not eat of this tree, or you shall surely die. Well, Satan came in and seduced them, and they turned away from God, and they took of the fruit, and they died. Not dropped down dead, but spiritually they died, and so did creation. And creation began to unravel, and all the corruption that we now see in the world is because of sin. But one day, that's going to be made right. One day, it's going to be restored. In fact, the very last verse of Revelation, chapter 22, says, come, Lord Jesus, come quickly. Come. Because when Jesus comes, he's going to make all things new. He's going to give us a new body, the resurrection that is to come, 1 Corinthians chapter 15. And some of you are like, yes, I can't wait, because your body is afflicted with pain. Your body, as you get older, you feel the aches. And you know what? One day we're going to get a new body. And creation itself is waiting, because one day creation will be made new. This world as we know it will be destroyed, and there will be a new earth. And heaven will come down, and the Lord will reign forever and ever here on the throne. Revelation chapter 20 and 21 and 22. In Isaiah it says, the lion shall lay down with the lamb. And we will have this perfect beauty as God intended it to be when he created the earth and he created the universe. So what do we do now? We wait. We wait. Now I think about my little girl, Lena, who just had her birthday party a few weeks ago. And the weeks prior to her birthday party, every day she would wake up and say to my wife, Mommy, is today the day? Not today, honey. Gotta wait. Oh, I can't wait for my birthday. I mean, she could burst with excitement. And so finally the day came. Actually, her birthday fell on a Tuesday, and she had to wait for the weekend. We have to wait, honey, but it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And then the day came, her birthday party. And you should have saw her face. I mean, it was priceless. As a parent, there's nothing more incredible in this world than seeing your child delight and just beam with radiance. And it just melted my heart. And I mean, her smile was as big as you could possibly imagine the whole day. And that time came, and she loved it, and she relished in it, and we loved it too, because it was a celebration. That is what's going to happen when Jesus comes back. Amen. Talk about a celebration, folks. New body, new earth. I mean, it's going to be the works, because Jesus said, behold, I am making all things new. You see, God never breaks his promise. Amen. Never. We know how it ends. Paul says if we did not have the resurrection to look forward to, we would have no hope. Meaning if this was all there is, then where would the hope be? There would be no hope, folks. We can make it today because of what lies ahead. We don't know when. And like Lena, we have to wait for that celebration. But when it happens, we will burst with delight. We can't even imagine what it's going to be like. And so now we have to wait. Creation itself is waiting. Looking, expecting, looking for when Jesus will come back and when we're going to be transformed, and we too have to wait. And that brings me to my second point, the reality of hope. So the first point is the idea or the reason we suffer. We suffer now because this is not all there is. We suffer now because this world is corrupted by sin, and therefore we are being delivered or brought to a new place which the Lord is preparing for us. And number two is the reality of hope. Let's pick up the verse, the text in verse 22 of chapter 8. For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. The whole creation groans. Now this is a picture of childbirth. And those moms out there, you know, childbirth is no joke. I mean, it is painful. I mean, I can't even imagine. My poor wife, 20-some hours of labor with Luke. And just waiting and waiting and waiting. A little bit of relief and then pain. Relief, pain, 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 pain. I mean, it's awful. But then the joy of that new life. When that mother holds that child for the first time in her arms. There's nothing like it. I can't even imagine what it's like for you all that are moms. And what I felt as a dad for the first time. And that's the picture. Creation is in the throes of childbirth. That is, in the pangs of that. And it's hard. It's painful. It hurts. But there's going to be relief. There's going to be new life. Verse 23. And not only they, that is creation, but ourselves also, which have the first fruits of the Spirit. Even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, in wit, the redemption of our body. The first fruits of the Spirit. Now, to a Jewish person, when Paul wrote this letter, they would have understood that, because in the Old Testament, the first fruits were the first offering. That is the best. The Levitical priests, the ministers of the Old Testament, would offer the best of the best, the first offering to God as a dedication. We are, as in God's creation, the first fruits. We are his prime, his crown of creation, because we're made in his image. Animals and plants and oceans are not, but we are. And so we have the first fruits of the Spirit. That's what Paul's meaning. It's stating. We ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, the redemption of our body. Now, wait a second. Aren't we already adopted? We looked at that last week, verse 15 of Romans 8. Aren't we already adopted? Yes, but not completely. Meaning, the moment that we come to Jesus, that we say yes to him, is the moment we're placed into his family. And the Spirit of God takes up residence in us, and we are a new creation. The old has gone, the new has come, but we still have to deal with this body. We still have to deal with the world that we live in and all the corruption and the sin of this world. And so our adoption is a process. That is to say, look what Paul says, the redemption of our body. You see, redemption is going to be a full package. First, it's our spirit. We are redeemed. We are made right. We are transformed. But one day our bodies will be redeemed too. We'll have a new body. Jesus died on the cross on Friday, and on the third day on Sunday, he rose again. We're going to talk about that coming up soon, Easter. In a new body, glorified body, and that's what it's going to be like. Now, 1 John chapter 3 says this, verse 2, Beloved, now we are the sons of God. Right now we're children of God. We are in him. And it does not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. Amen. Right now we're children of God. Nothing can change that. No one can take that from you. It's a truth, it's a reality, but one day we will be like Jesus, for we shall see him like he is. That is, we'll have a new, glorified, resurrected body. So right now we are in the pangs and the throes of childbirth. We're groaning within ourselves. This word groaning, by the way, means a groan of affliction. It's not just a bored or disappointed groan. It's a painful, intense groaning, and we feel it, don't we? You feel it every time you plan something special. Maybe you're planning something special for your husband or your wife, or you're planning a vacation, and then something doesn't go the way you planned. The weather doesn't cooperate. The person you planned it for doesn't cooperate. You get interrupted by a phone call with bad news. Whatever it may be, life is filled with this disappointment. And then you feel the groan. I try so hard to make things work. And then, fill in the blank. We feel it, don't we? Even with our best intentions, sometimes things oftentimes they don't go the way we hoped. And so we feel that groan. That's because we're in the throes of this, folks. We are waiting for the redemption of our body, the full redemption that is to come. Verse 24, for we are saved by hope, but hope that is seen is not hope. For what a man seeth, why does he yet hope for? Amen. But if we hope for we hope for that we see not, then do we wait patiently for it. In other words, you don't hope for what you already have. If you're eating ice cream on the couch at night, and you're like, wow, I really hope I have some ice cream right now. I mean, that would be illogical. It wouldn't make any sense. No, you have it. We are hoping for what we do not yet have. And that is a living hope, Peter says. Meaning it's going to happen. And so what do? When you're not yet with it, that is, you don't have the reality of it, you wait. You hope. You keep hope alive. Christians are to keep hope alive. That is perseverance. That is that sense of keep taking one step at a time. It's hard sometimes to keep going in life. It's hard to put one foot in front of the other, but you got to do it because you're moving forward. Hope is living. It's not some pie-in-the-sky ideal. It's a truth that we can hold on to, and that keeps us going, especially in the hard times of life. We live in Michigan, but we hope spring will come, right? If spring didn't come, we'd be out of here. We'd join Delbert and Bev in a hot second. I'll move to Florida. No, we hope that spring is coming because it is coming. We can see it now. New life is springing forward. We can see the buds in the tree about ready to burst open. New life is coming, folks. Verse 26. Likewise, the Spirit, that is the Spirit of God, also helpeth us in our iniquities, for we know not what we should pray for as we ought, but the Spirit itself makes intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. In other words, God's Spirit is working in us, and He too is groaning for us, longing for us to become all that God has called us to become, which means the full redemption that we will experience. So He is working in us. The groan of creation, the groan of our own spirit, and God's groan within us. And so we have a final lesson. And here's the lesson. As human beings, we need something to look forward to in life, or we're not going to make it. So you plan a vacation, and you prepare. You save up. You have all the details prepared out, because that is something you're looking forward to. You have something to look forward to. Kids look forward to summer break when school's over. We look forward to when the work week is over, for the weekend, or whatever it may be. We have to have something to look forward to, or we will despair. Christians have the best and greatest thing to look forward to. We have eternal life. Amen. We have the enjoyment of God. We can't even imagine what it's going to be like when we no longer struggle with the sin that we struggle with. We no longer have to feel the disappointment that we feel in life, the loneliness, the sense of affliction, that sense of isolation, whatever it may be. We will not feel that one day, and it will be amazing. So what do we do now? We look forward. We plan. An athlete disciplines himself or herself now for the event they're going to compete in. If they're a runner, they're training for that race. If they're a swimmer, they're training for that meet. They're working toward the goal. And so we are now. We need to discipline ourselves. We need to keep hope alive. We need to persevere. We need to work at it in the sense of take those steps of faith. So, are you feeling a little bit achy this morning? I'm not talking about physically. I'm talking about inside. Are you feeling a little achy? Are you feeling homesick for a home that you've never been to before? for a place that you can't even imagine or comprehend? If so, that's a good thing. Because God wants to remind us this morning that heaven is our home. And that ache is that indication and that sense that we are on our way to it. And so when you're disappointed in life, when you're feeling let down, when you're feeling depressed, discouraged, like you want to just throw in the towel, feel this, remember this, realize that you're groaning inside yourself because you're not yet there.
Amen.
And hold on a little tighter. And hold a little looser to the world around you, because the world around you is not all there is. In fact, the world around you is going to be gone. But what we do have is Jesus. And what we do have is his place, that blessed habitation that we're going to all be at one day. So, folks, let me encourage you to feel that ache inside of you and remember that you are displaced and you are on your way to your ultimate place. And let us keep that in our hearts this morning, and as we face the week ahead of us, which we will face, that ache and the disappointment that we all face. Let's pray together. Lord Jesus, thank you that you have placed within us this